Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your back porch professor, and we have got some absolutely stunning developments as the U.S.-Israeli Operation Epic Fury enters its second week with absolutely devastating results. First, if you haven't already done so, make sure to watch my live stream from yesterday where I lay out in detail, step by step, Trump's grand strategy behind this war. So if you want to know exactly why Trump is waging this war against Iran and how it fits into a stunning civilizational geopolitics, then you'll definitely want to check out our live stream from yesterday. But since then, we've had some extraordinarily telling developments. The first major development is that the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian just appeared on state television and issued an astonishing public apology to neighboring Gulf states for the Iranian attacks this past week. And he promised that there will be no more attacks made on any neighboring countries unless Iran is struck from their territory. And as part of his apology, he attributed the strikes on Gulf states to what he called miscommunication within the ranks. And that claim of miscommunication could not possibly have been more ironic because as that pre-recorded apology was being aired, Iranian missiles and drones were still at that very moment actively striking Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Bloomberg is reporting that UAE intercepted 16 ballistic missiles the same day, and Saudi Arabia shot down drones targeting its Shabay oil field, again within hours of that apology. And so right away, analysts have drawn two conclusions from this apology. First and foremost, that contradiction is not a glitch. It exposes a profound fracture in Iran's command structure created by the killing of the Supreme Leader Khamenei on February 28th. The Supreme Leader was the linchpin, right? Iran's constitution places the Supreme Leader as commander-in-chief of all armed forces, including the IRGC, the regular army, the strategic missile forces. So the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, they control Iran's missile arsenal. They run regional operations. They answered only to Khamenei, not to the elected president. Remember, the Iranian president is elected and serves terms, whereas the supreme leader is like their monarch in a sense. He's permanent. And he was the sole authority that the IRGC reported to. That's why taking out Khamenei and all of his replacements, right, his very temporary replacements who've since been assassinated, was so vital to this mission because it effectively disrupted Iran's military chain of command. So what we're seeing here with that apology and the strikes on while the apology is being made is a very clear split in the leadership. You've got a president sounding conciliatory, whereas the IRGC is operating autonomously and independently. Their general commander, Ahmed Vahidi, he's basically the de facto leader. He's continuing the aggression on his own, as it were, all the while the elected president is offering apologies. So this isn't just bureaucratic confusion. It reveals two competing survival strategies inside the Iranian regime. So you've got the Pezeshkian faction, the president's faction. They're clearly pragmatists. They're recognizing that attacking neutral Gulf states is a catastrophic miscalculation that turns potential mediators into enemies. So his apology is an attempt to sort of peel off regional opposition, create diplomatic space. And then on the other side, you got the IRGC hardliners who view continued escalation, including strikes on Arab Gulf states, as an existential survival strategy. And their logic is to impose such high costs on Washington, Gulf capitals, and the global economy so as to pressure for a ceasefire before the regime collapses. So basically, one side is trying to find an off-ramp, whereas the other side is trying to hold out and wait out and wear down the coalition's will to continue this war. They know they've got 4 weeks, right? They know Western populations will support and tolerate this operation only for a limited time, and they're hoping to be able to squeeze that patience by making this operation as painful as possible on the allied powers. So that's the first conclusion, that we're seeing a very clear split in the Iranian leadership. Now, beyond that leadership split, there's a second, arguably more consequential interpretation of Pezeshkian's apology. Bottom line, it's not so much as an apology as an admission. It's an admission that Iran is running out of weapons. Bottom line, right? The promise that, oh, we're not going to strike you anymore with any more missiles, no more drone strikes, right? Drone strikes and so forth. They're not doing that. They're not apologizing because of remorse. They're apologizing because they simply have no more weapons to attack with. The data on Iran's declining strike capacity is very stark. Tehran's missile salvos have dropped roughly 86%, and their drone attacks have dropped 73%. Iran went from launching approximately 350 missiles on the first day of the war in the opening phase to now barely 8. Right. And falling. The bottleneck is launchers. It's not even the missiles per se. Analysts found that U.S. and Israeli forces have destroyed approximately 75% of Iran's TEL force. That's TEL, so that's their transporter erector launcher capabilities. Without launchers, missiles simply sit in storage. They're functionally useless, like a bullet without a chamber. So thanks to our dominance in astropolitics, like we talked about yesterday, we have such satellite sophistication that each time Iran fires what remains of their TEL force, it exposes its surviving launchers to detection and destruction, accelerating the depletion spiral. Again, it's a classic doom loop. And the reopening of the Dubai International Airport today, the busiest airport in the region, is a very clear signal that Iran's weapons capacities have been largely exhausted and depleted. The airport was shut down after Iran pummeled the UAE with its missiles and drones. But now, clearly, the threat assessment indicates that Iran's capacity to do any more damage like that has been more or less eliminated. Now, for his part, President Trump responded to that apology by scoffing at it and calling Iran the loser of the Middle East, right? He is a New Yorker after all. And so he wrote on Truth Social that Iran is just being beat to hell and that they're basically surrendering to their Middle East neighbors. They're waving the white flag. But he promised the beating was only going to intensify and that there will be no mercy until there is total and unconditional surrender. And he said, quote, "Today, Iran will be hit very hard, and they are putting new targets, previously off limits areas and groups, under serious consideration for complete destruction and annihilation." Again, those are Trump's words. President Trump has announced that the United States and Israel have officially entered phase 2 of Operation Epic Fury. The initial phase, which involved suppressing air defenses, decapitating command and control, and destroying missile launchers, is now considered officially complete. Phase 2 shifts to dismantling Iran's defense industrial base, so missile production facilities, weapons factories, and underground ballistic missile silos. So obviously you don't move to destroying production capacity unless you've already largely neutralized existing capacity, which is itself an admission that Iran's current arsenal is functionally spent. Second, you've got the ground troops have arrived, but they're not American. Kurdish ground forces are amassing on the Iran-Iraq border. Al Jazeera reported today that a Kurdish coalition leader called a ground invasion into Western Iran, quote, highly likely, with fighters ready to cross at any given moment pending U.S. and Israeli air cover. President Trump has publicly endorsed the move, saying that he would fully support that ground invasion. Israel's reportedly been bombing Western Iranian border posts, communication towers, IRGC bases along highways from Iraq specifically to clear the path. A ground front from the west, something Iran has never had to face simultaneously with an aerial campaign, would stretch the IRGC's already shattered forces beyond any recoverable position. And at the very same time, it has now been announced that the Iranian crown prince, Reza Pahlavi, the 65-year-old exiled son of Iran's last Shah, has formally accepted the call to lead a transitional government in a public address directed at Arab leaders. He confirmed that the Iranian people have called on him to lead the transition after the regime is gone, that he has indeed accepted that responsibility. He pledged an orderly transition from the regime to one that would be acceptable to the Arab Gulf states. And what's so interesting here is that he framed his role explicitly as a bridge, not a restoration of the monarchy, but that's certainly in the cards, right? There's already a very significant groundswell of support for the restoration of the Iranian monarchy. And he also unveiled in true Trumpian fashion the blueprint of what's being called the Iran Prosperity Project. That's a phased plan to stabilize the economy and essential services within the first 100 days post-regime, followed by a national referendum on the future system of Iranian governance. Now, when you connect all the dots here, Pezeshkian's apology, the split in the leadership, the 86% decline in missile capacity, 75% launcher destruction, the reopening of the world's busiest international airport in Dubai, phase 2 of the campaign and the destruction of their production capacity, the Kurdish ground forces amassing at their border, and the return of the crown prince, I mean, a very clear, coherent picture emerges. The Iranian regime is nearing its end. How long it will take remains to be seen, but it does appear that the end of the regime's 47-year reign is not a matter of if, but only when. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button for breaking news and analysis you're not going to get anywhere else. Love you guys. Enjoy your weekend. God bless.